Hey guys, this is Bharatz and welcome to Bharat's Kitchen with how to make McDonald's Pizza McPuff. That's right. Well, before we begin, I'd like to tell you that this particular pastry dough follows the concept of a puff pastry and to some level a pizza dough. So it has some fat in the form of butter or oil, some cold water and a rising agent. So we're gonna begin with some all-purpose flour and generous amount of oil. Now I'm using olive oil. You can also go for vegetable oil if you want to. It won't make much of a difference. Then we're gonna add some salt and some baking powder. Now baking powder and oil are the reasons why a pizza puff is a little soft and at the same time a little firm. So it's soft like inside of a pizza base, but it doesn't have a bread-like structure. And that is why we've added oil and baking powder. So we'll mix the oil thoroughly throughout the flour, and by doing this process, your pastry will get small layers, which is kind of similar to a puff pastry. So after mixing the oil thoroughly, you'll notice that the color of the flour would change from white to this pale yellowish kind of a color. And when you combine the flour, it will behave something like this. Now we'll start adding water in batches. So I'm gonna make a well in the center of the bowl and add the first batch of cold water, which is 1/4 of a cup of water, and then just try to mix and combine the flour with the water. Then we're gonna add the second batch of cold water, which is again 1/4 of a cup of water. Now you'll notice that the dough will start to come together. So I'm going to transfer my dough to a flat surface so that I can easily knead the dough. At this point, we're going to add the last batch of cold water, which is 1/16 of a cup of water. Now we're going to start to combine the dough and make it as smooth as possible. I guess it's pretty visible that I've used pretty precise amount of water. So if you're thinking why, then it's simply because you want a very firm dough. And if you'll not follow the recipe precisely and add even a little more water, you'll not achieve a smooth skin on your pizza puff like McDonald's has. But the catch here is this dough is pretty hard to work with. I mean, if you're a pro wrestler, then definitely go for it. And yeah, I know what you're thinking. I have lots of muscles, okay? Okay, I'm just joking, but not about my muscles. Now you'll notice that if you poke the dough, it will not retract to its original position. So to make the dough stretchy, we need to develop gluten. And for that, we need to apply some science. So we'll follow the same method that we did in our samosa video. That is, cover the dough with a wet cloth and let it rest for at least 30 minutes. So in the meanwhile, I'm gonna start making the stuffing for the pizza puff. For that, we'll finely chop some onions. Then we're gonna finely chop some green bell pepper, also known as capsicum. We're also gonna be finely chopping some orange and fresh English carrots. And finally, I'm gonna finely chop few beans. Now since I'm using frozen peas and frozen corn, I'm gonna keep them in hot water for at least 10 minutes. Alright. So I'm going to take a non-stick pan, and no, you cannot use any other pan because we cannot use excess oil while making the stuffing. We're going to keep the pan on medium-low flame and add some olive oil. You can also go for vegetable oil if you want, it's up to you. Then we're going to add our finely chopped onions and cook for about 5 minutes. So basically we don't want to caramelize the onions, but we just want to cook them until they are translucent. Then we're going to add our finely chopped bell pepper and cook for 5 minutes more. At this point, we're gonna add our finely chopped English carrot, our finely chopped beans, and finally, we're gonna add our peas and sweet corn and mix everything together. So we're gonna cook the vegetables for 5 minutes more. So basically, we don't want the vegetables to be very soft, but at the same time, we don't want the vegetables to be very firm. Then we're gonna add some water and let the vegetables simmer for a little while. Now when the water starts to bubble vigorously, we're gonna add some pasta and pizza sauce. Now if you want to know which brand I've used and which all brand you can use, for that you can read my blog post and you'll find everything there. We're gonna mix the sauce until it combines with water and it becomes a little liquidy. Then we're gonna add some salt, some sugar, some black pepper, some dried oregano, some chili flakes, some dried basil leaves, and a pinch of thyme. Finally, I'm gonna add a little secret ingredient that will increase the acidity and enhance the flavor of the stuffing, that is vinegar. Then we're gonna mix everything together, and finally, I'm gonna add the last two ingredients, that is some garlic powder. Now if you don't have garlic powder, you can add 6 or 7 finely chopped mid-sized cloves of garlic and add them in the beginning before adding onions. In the end, I'm gonna add some tomato ketchup. Now if you're wondering why have I added tomato ketchup at the end, well it is because most commercially made tomato ketchups have an emulsifying agent. So when you add it in the end, they will thicken the stuffing and they will absorb the leftover liquid. We're gonna mix everything together and cook for 2-3 minutes more and transfer our stuffing into a bowl. Now before adding cheese, we need to wait for the stuffing to cool down, because if we add the cheese while the stuffing is hot, it can melt and the fat in the cheese can split and release some water, which will totally ruin your stuffing. So I'm gonna keep the stuffing in the freezer for a minimum of 20 minutes and maximum of 30 minutes, not more than that. Now after 30 minutes, I'm gonna add some pre-grated and cold mozzarella cheese. So this cheese has been grated before and kept in the refrigerator for 3 hours. Now McDonald's has a prefix ratio in their recipe, so the cheese in the stuffing should be around 13 to 17% of the total stuffing, which is around 50 grams of the stuffing in my mixture. So therefore don't add excess cheese because it can burst your pizza puff while frying. So I'm gonna mix everything and keep the stuffing in the freezer to chill for around 15 minutes, because the stuffing of pizza puffs should always be very cold. So now we're gonna take the dough out of the damp cloth, and due to moisture the dough would have become a little soft. We're gonna knead the dough for 5 minutes, but you'll notice that this particular dough would exactly not be very smooth, but still I'm gonna try to roll it into a log and cut it into equal sized discs. Now if you look closely, when you'll cut the dough, it'll have these little air pockets or these holes, which makes it kind of look like a bread, which is basically because when water is added to baking powder, it acts as a levying agent. Now earlier when I poked the dough, it didn't retract it to its original position, but now as soon as I squeeze the dough, it starts to contract, and that is what we are after. So due to resting the dough in a wet cloth, gluten has developed, and that, my friends, is science, which is very similar to the concept which we discussed in my samosa video. So now we're just gonna roll our disc and keep it little towards the thinner side, because this puff shell would rise a little bit. And don't worry, you don't have to roll it into a circle, because mistakes can be done by experienced people also. Then we're just gonna cut few equal size rectangles. You can use a knife also to do that, but remember that you have to keep your rectangles a little bigger than the actual size you want, because we'll cut the edges later on when we'll seal these pizza puffs. Alright. So now on a flat surface, I'm gonna sprinkle some all-purpose flour and keep one rectangle sheet at the bottom. We're gonna apply some water at the edges of the sheet, and with the help of a spoon, add some of our stuffing. Now be careful and don't add a lot of stuffing, and make sure the edges are clean. Then we're gonna keep the other rectangle sheet and gently on the edges tap and squeeze, and try to knock the air out of the pizza puff. Finally, with the help of a knife or a fondant cutter, I'm gonna cut the edges off and try to seal my pizza puffs properly. Then we're gonna rub some all-purpose flour on the other side of the pizza puff, and there you go. This is exactly what we're after. Now McDonald's have these machines which make their work much easier, but at home it will be really hard to make one pizza puff at a time. So I suggest you use any kind of a mold, like I am using a Gujia mold. Now this will make your job much easier and will seal the pizza puff in much nicer way. So I'm just gonna roll a sheet, apply some water on both the sides, and add some of the pizza stuffing, but not a lot of it. I'm gonna leave some space at the edges and just close it tightly and get a result something like this. Now it's very important to sprinkle some all-purpose flour on both the sides of your pizza puff and keep your pizza puff in freezer for at least 15 minutes before frying. You can also keep this pizza puff in an airtight container and keep it in the freezer for 2 days. Alright, so now it's time to fry these pizza puffs. So McDonald's fry their pizza puff at 336° Fahrenheit or around 170° centigrade, which is basically on a medium flame. So I'm gonna drop a piece of the pizza puff and it should take exactly 2 seconds to come up, and then your oil is ready. I'm gonna drop a minimum of 4 pizza puffs together so that heat is evenly distributed and maintained, because these pizza puffs are straight off the freezer and are very cold. And finally, to save these pizza puffs from bursting open, do not flip them a lot of time. So what McDonald's does is that they fry these puffs in a vertical fixed position so that they don't move and they don't burst. So I suggest you flip them only once or twice, and whenever you flip them very gently. So we're gonna fry them until they are golden brown, or until they look like this. Now you can clearly see that the outer shell looks exactly like McDonald's. And when I'll open it, the inside looks and tastes exactly the same. And there you go guys, how to make McDonald's Pizza McPuff. If you liked the video, do give it a thumbs up. For updates and queries, don't forget to like me on Facebook. Until then, I'll see you all next time.